Hey guys, Dave and Len here. Welcome to Wargame Chat. Today we're going to talk about GaryCon. We both went to it last week. Let's talk about the panels first and then the games. The panel I went to was, they had some guys from various different role-playing companies and I think miniature manufacturers and accessory manufacturers who do a lot of Kickstarters. So the seminar was basically about successfully running a Kickstarter. It was entertaining to watch, and but I didn't learn that much, really. Most of what they said to me just kind of seemed like common sense, though there were a few tidbits I thought were helpful. But what seminars did you go to?
Okay, I had one about therapy and role-playing games. How to well, actually, I thought this would be about subject like, remember, Dungeons and Dragons has this legacy of people having problems that they kill themselves or kill other people. So, but it's mostly about how to deal with people with psychological problems and how to get therapy and stuff like that. And the other was a documentary about this one minister who's the geek minister about the great Dungeons and Dragons satanic scare. And
I remember that when I was in, like, I don't know, it was 5th grade or 6th grade, and one teacher's like, yeah, don't play Dungeons and Dragons. You'll end up committing suicide because you're worshiping the devil when you play Dungeons and Dragons or some nonsense like that.
Well, actually, the running joke we used to have was, well, isn't that the point of Dungeons and Dragons? And then the other running joke was, well, if that's a problem, go play Chivalry and Sorcery. I mean, I think the problem what TSR had was they had these the artwork that was like with the monsters, and for someone who's not doesn't know anything about the horror genre in detail, they'd be frightened by this because they're seeing their kids looking at these horrible monsters, and of course some people are very the enemies are very charismatic, and so for a while there they were running scared. One of the two I remember was later busted for trying to sell drugs to hospital patients, and Margaret Pooling, she died of cancer in '97, and she was actually a very effective spokesperson against it. But the problem was that she kept insisting that the Necronomicon was a real book.
Actually, there is a real book called the Necronomicon.
Yeah, but it wasn't something H.P. Lovecraft wrote. It was like something somebody wrote because, well...
Right. But I mean, the book did exist.
Yeah. One thing at this, I learned that the Jack Chick had a comic about the satanic dangers of D&D. And the worst part of it, they actually made a film of this. So the next day I tuned into it on YouTube, and it was a laugh riot. That's RPG. I remember I thought it was hilarious. At one point, one of the characters who was being seduced was actually painting miniatures. I was thinking, oh no, they're going to... one thing...
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the games I played was Full Thrust Light. Full Thrust
was a miniature wargaming, miniature ship combat game with. Did they have the miniatures and stuff? Or
yeah, they had the miniatures.
Yeah.
And I thought that actually this was very good. It had enough detail to be interesting, but it didn't overwhelm me with detail.
It sounded like it was playable, which is good.
Which is good because I was essentially going up against 3 guys who played it before, and naturally I get my ass kicked. But it wasn't until third turn I realized with my ships they were good at frontal attacks. Instead of trying to go around it, if I just pointed at him, I could fire like proton torpedoes left and right and got rid of his big ship. Because that's one thing I noticed that this isn't like battleships and cruisers where your 5-inch the shells from your 5-inch gun are going to bounce off the 16-inch armor belt. So, I usually concentrated my fire first on the heavy cruiser, and then when I got in range, the battle cruiser. They took some pretty heavy damage, but they survived, and I got wiped out.
Yeah, first game I played was Sturmgeschütz and Sorcery. Apparently it's an old miniatures rule set, which was for using World War II miniatures versus fantasy. Anyhow, when I got to the room looking for it, the tables that table wasn't marked, and I looked around the room and I didn't see any game that looked anything like that. So it turned out that it was the table where they had like a medieval castle with orcs on it. So I said, "Is this Sturmgeschütz and Sorcery?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So anyhow, the game, even though it was Sturmgeschütz and Sorcery and should have been World War II and fantasy, they had the orcs and they had the dragons, and then the enemy was Imperial Star Wars figures and Rebel Star Wars figures. And the Rebels and the Imperials weren't really on the same side, so our orcs managed to keep the Star Wars figures out of the castle, and our dragons killed quite a few of them. Actually, our orcs killed quite a few, too. And then Darth Vader, though, got attacked by a white dragon, and while it was hovering above him, he took his lightsaber and slashed its chest open, and it died. But the problem is, when it died, this 50-ton dragon fell on top of Darth Vader, and he died too. But I was playing the orcs. I was controlling, I think, the blue dragon, and then I was controlling some orc archers and an orc shaman. The orc shaman was kind of cool. His spells actually did some damage. They had like standard spells like fireball and stuff like that. It turned out to be they called it a minor victory for the orcs. I thought it was a major victory because we kept them out of the castle and killed quite a few figures. But they said because the rebel troopers, I guess their mission was to make it from one edge of the board to the other, which we didn't know. And so a few of them made it off the board, so they said it was only a minor victory. I thought we had a major victory, but whatever. Well, any other games you played?
That was it. I only had time for one. I didn't push myself because I had to drive like 80 miles to get there. So the two seminars, I did buy some stuff. First of all, from Luzacci's Game Science, the Book of Tables.
Here, hold that up so I can see.
Yes.
And what's in it? Just RPG tables, or?
Yeah, I haven't looked through all of it, but they had some, like, for instance, they had ones like if you if you have a magic sword, you roll to see what you're going to name it, and physical descriptions of weapons, specific opponent. I think there was one. If you have a Wild West encounter, what are you going to? Who are you going to meet? And this is $10. Oh, this is a generic. He even has a generic dungeon generator where you can roll to see where, okay, you go in a straight line, okay, you move left, or how many doors.
Interesting.
It was $10. Probably was $10 in 1970. And when $10 was a lot of money. And I also bought a 20-sider from Luzacci.
Yeah, it looks like he's no longer using those crappy dice he used to have with the uninked numbers and stuff. It looks like he's just buying the standard ones now from China, which are better than the ones he was making, that's for sure.
I didn't buy this, but I met the designer, Douglas Niles, who designed this. He worked for, actually was surprised that he was invited because he worked at TSR for 22 months before he was let go in a reduction.
Yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't be invited because, I mean, as far as TSR... I mean, they're owned by someone now, but I mean, none of the original employees work for whatever this new company is. I forget which one owns them now.
Yeah,
but
I forget, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
He was at that one documentary about the Satanic Scare. He said, look, I created a game about violence and destruction and no one complains. And I told him about how friends of mine, we were running for a few months a top secret campaign. But what we did was, they didn't like modern espionage. We liked these old anti-communist movies. So we set themselves as a communist clique in 1955, and we're doing all sorts of subversive stuff. I was going to make flood the market with counterfeit money, but I had to make all sorts of decisions, like how good. If I want to go on the cheap, I could flood it real fast, but a lot of people would notice it. Or I can go to good quality. And of course, at times I had to wonder if I was being followed, or the game master was things like, you come home and find out the door is open. Why is the door open? Am I being spied on? One of the other guys had a shootout with the FBI, and he managed to escape. And I think one of the guys was trying to blackmail Curtis LeMay to get the nuclear codes, but he was failing in that. And the other guy was trying to subvert American youth by publishing comic books, violent comic books. And I think we even had Joe McCarthy made a guest appearance. And
what are those other RPGs you got?
Okay,
those
now,
are kind of cool, the Rocket Age
yeah,
stuff.
Rocket Age is science fiction in the 1930s. Actually, I didn't buy that. That's the main book.
You already owned it?
Yeah, it's science fiction in the 1930s. Think of Flash Gordon, and other types of science fiction, or Doc E. Smith. And you have people on other planets, strange people on other planets. And of course, all the planets in the solar system have oxygen, so humans can live on.
Oh, of course.
So these are two supplements: Blood Red Mars and The Lure of Venus.
I assume these are just about the worlds of Mars and Venus.
The designer was at the convention, but I never did find out where he was at. I bought that later in the day, and I didn't have time to look for him. So.
Yeah, stuff I bought. I bought some weird fantasy board game that was unplayed for, I don't know, it was like $10 or $15. I was like, all right, I'll get it. This looks sufficiently off the beaten path that I would want it. And I read the reviews of it after I bought it, and maybe I shouldn't have. The Board Game Geek reviews, I think it was rated about a 4.8, so people generally didn't like it. But I also got, what else did I get? Knights of the Dinner Table gave out a free comic. I got that. It was from like 2006 or something. I actually don't like Knights of the Dinner Table that much. I tried reading it. It's like in a single issue of Knights of the Dinner Table, I might find like 6 of the pages interesting, and the rest is just blah. I also bought, 130 blisters of fantasy miniatures. Some guy had them for dirt cheap, so I just bought them all. And trying to think, I was gonna get, I forget if it was Hell Tank 2 or Hell Tank Destroyer, I forget which one. But the guy had it for sale for $20, which is actually a decent price on that. And it said on the back, it was in a plastic bag, and it said on the back that it was had never been played. And I looked at it, and I was like, I thought these things came in shrink wrap. So I asked him, I said, can I open it up? So I opened it up, and sure enough, the counters are punched and stuff. I was like, nah, I don't want it. I was like, I thought it was unpunched. But yeah, you got to be careful when you buy used games, because either these people aren't paying attention when they're marketing them as played or unplayed, or who knows, maybe they're just trying to fool you. But yeah, be very careful when buying used games. And then as far as last game I played was Battle in the Skies, and none of you have played it because it's some rules from Dave Arnson. I guess, I don't know if his son found the rules or something, and it was never published. It was essentially an expansion for Fight in the Skies from TSR, where different, like, griffins and dragons and stuff were the air units and stuff, and you had, like, fantasy ground units and all that. The guy putting it on was the director of Blackmore, the documentary, something about Dungeons and Dragons, Blackmore.
That's about Dave Arneson.
Oh, okay. But yeah, he was a director of that. And so he put on the game, but he didn't really know how to play it, so we were trying to figure out the game as it was going on, which I thought was pretty weird for a convention game, if you're going to put on a convention game and know the rules. But, I mean, from what we put together, it seemed okay. I'm not a fan of Fight in the Skies from TSR. The reason being is because you can never tell what altitude everyone's at, so you got to just ask the other guys what altitude their aircraft are at, which, I don't know, that gets annoying, but... Yeah, that was the only other game I played. I just went on Saturday. You just went on Saturday too, right?
Yeah, because I was about to say, I didn't get a chance to talk to people. I did get my copy of the Avalon Hills Source of the Nile signed by both designers.
That's good.
Yeah, I remember I got the game at RockCon, and they were both there, and then I remember driving home halfway to Chicago and said, hey, wait a minute, maybe I could get them to sign it. I thought about it too late. But this is the second time I've been to GaryCon. The first time was about 3-4 years ago. I have a problem with GaryCon. In fact, it's usually at the same time as the 7 Years War Convention.
It's also at the same time as Adepticon. Why? And Adepticon's only like an hour from there, so it's like they're stealing customers from each other by having it on the same weekend. Yeah.
Well, actually, I was thinking GaryCon tends to get a lot of the older TSR, older role players. And also, since it's a smaller convention, if they don't go to Adepticon's not going to notice that they're missing a few people. And sometimes from my previous time at GaryCon, I was with a couple other friends, and they were complaining how, cliquish.
I didn't find it to be cliquish at all, but I have been at some conventions where it's very cliquish, where if you go by yourself and you don't know anyone there, you like feel left out and stuff. I didn't feel left out at all at GaryCon, so that was good.
Well, I pointed out that a lot of these people, they've been playing together for years, so it's like, they know how to go with each other.
Yeah, it was a good convention. I think I'll probably alternate going to either Adepticon or GaryCon each year. My only complaint is the dealers area was in a different building and kind of far from the convention itself. Thing. And if I was a dealer and I had paid money for a booth and it was that far from where the action is, I would have been pissed. I mean, because you want the dealer area as close to where the action is as possible, because I'm sure a lot of people never... I had trouble finding it, first of all. I had to look at a map to see how to get there. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't bother looking for it, or others just couldn't find it and didn't go. So I think the dealers probably lost out on a lot of business by having the dealers area in such a terrible location.
Oh, well, there was a map of the area, the con area, and never really said where the dealer's room was. I think they said the merchant area.
It was by the forum or something, which is like in a different building. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. But overall, the convention was very good. I recommend it to you.
Yeah. Because, I'd recommend it. The only other problem with GaryCon, sometimes it's hard to get in, because I remember last time we had a wait. You had to wait to a certain day in January to put in your bids for a game. If you got big bucks, you can get like these gold or silver tickets, which give you priority.
Yeah, I just registered online for the events. I didn't have any trouble getting them.
Yeah, maybe this time around, because there's not that many people. One of the sad things, they had a list of people who are no longer with us. And it's like, there are a lot of names on there.
Right. Yeah.
So.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll have a new topic for next week. Have a good weekend.